Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. I want you to meet my morning stars, Andre and Robert and Ashley down in Memphis. And oh, so many of you are joining. Come on, everybody. Like, and share, like and share. I need you to go to the Santita Jackson Show, Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. That is where Facebook really wants you all to go. And because we're getting so much traction here, they reach out to you and they ask you to migrate people from Facebook over to YouTube. So would you all please do that for me? Would you work with me? Work with me. So when you get over there, like and subscribe. And Ashley and Robert and Andre and everybody who's watching right now, please do me a favor and share the show. Share the show, like and share the show. That helps us with our algorithms. Okay, the more I'm learning, the more I'm trying to share with you. So like and share, like and share, like and share, and of course meet me on. But you can still meet me on Facebook. You can still be my friend on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Santita Jackson and Friends, not the Santita Jackson landing page. Everybody keeps trying to go over there, and you know what? You're getting kicked out, and I'm not doing it. Facebook does that. When you reach a certain number of friends, they start purging people. And they've been purging you, honestly, by the thousands. So please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Sending you all so much love today. We got a lot to talk about, a lot of ground to cover. We're going to revisit the Sonia Massey case in the second hour with attorney G. Flint Taylor, Fred Hampton's lawyer. Really, he's called around the world the lefty lawyer. And his book is on police torture and violence in Chicago, but it really has an application all across the country and all across the world. And so he reached out to me yesterday. He said, this is really in my wheelhouse. Can we talk about this? I said, absolutely. I mean, this is the man who absolutely turned the Fred Hampton story around. The first iteration of the story, the morning after we found out that Fred Hampton had been killed, it was a shootout, according to the corporate media, the legacy media, as they're called. Well, it turns out he, as his lawyer, went to the apartment immediately just to see what was going on. And beyond the horror that he witnessed, he saw that all of the bullets were pointing toward the apartment. There were no bullets that came from Mark Clark, his security. They killed him immediately. There were no bullets fired by Fred Hampton. And in fact, they shot him scores of times in the bed, and then they pulled him out of his bed. And as he begged for his life, they laughed and they shot him and killed him. As his 8.5-month pregnant fiance ran out in the cold in her nightgown. Unbelievable. You can't make this up. So he's going to talk to us about this experience because there's something that he sees in this Sonia Massey case, attorney C.K. Hoffler, as you do, that as you do, attorney Darrell Jones, as you do, Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, Esquire, that that's very disturbing. It seems that Black women we can't be in our homes and find any peace. Our men can't ride in their cars. We can't come home. Brianna, hello. We gotta look at this. But first, we're gonna look at President Biden. I don't know what he's going to do with these last few months that he has in office, but he might be doing some things. Attorney Robert Patillo said, hey, he just needs to get a stack of executive orders and sign them. Boom, boom, boom. Would they last 4 years? No. Would they last a few months? Yes. They might help us too. And one of the measures that he wants to push through is the idea of Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court reforms. And this is coming at a time when the Supreme Court really is in crisis because more Americans mistrust and distrust the Supreme Court than at any time since this has been measured. We are uncomfortable and don't like the cozy relationships that our justices and their wives have with billionaires who have cases before the court, who appear to have influence upon them. Virginia Thomas was at the January 6th rally. Now, she wasn't at the raid, but she was certainly a proponent of President Trump. She was pushing for them not to accept the results of the election. And he has not recused, her husband has not recused himself from any of those cases. I mean, we just keep on going. There's just a whole lot to unpack there. But we also look at the fact that they don't have term limits. These are lifetime appointments, and on and on and on. And it seems uh, that the president wants that ended. He wants term limits. What about the scrutiny? What about the oversight? Why is it that many, um, Bill Barr said, don't do this. You're going to get rid of all of the conservative justices. Ian Millhiser, a prominent progressive scholar, said, look, this is useless. So I'm sure there's it's somewhere in between. It's something. So let me bring some people together who are brilliant, brilliant attorneys who can help us to understand what this is. Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, the executive director, she's an educator as well and a pastor, but she is also a lawyer, a civil rights and criminal defense lawyer. And we want to find out from you what your thoughts are. Attorney Daryl Jones, and of course, she is at Rainbow Push, the executive director of the Push Excel program, their education program. Attorney Daryl Jones, Esquire, chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition, criminal defense lawyer, voting rights lawyer, civil rights lawyer. So glad that you're with us. And of course, we're going to start with the former president of the National Bar Association, the largest and oldest Black bar association in the world, uh, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, the chair of Rainbow Push, and of course, legal analyst on Court TV. When can we see you on Court TV this week?
You can see me today on Court TV this week from 2 to 3. You can Eastern Standard Time. That's right, Eastern Standard Time. And I will also be on Thursday on Court TV. And give me a second, the time on Thursday. Okay. Thursday, it will be from 5 to 6 Eastern Standard Time.
I am so proud of you.
I never remember.
Wait a minute, hold on, stop everybody. Unmute. Come on, give it up. Okay, all right. Okay. Okay, so now CA, moving back. Okay, what do you make of President Biden's proposals? They seem like, well, I mean, some people they're being hailed on in some quarters, but many people are saying they're useless. Not just the timing, but what will they really do? What do they have any chance of getting through? I mean, do you think he's opening up the discussion? What does he propose, and is it useless?
You know, Santita, good morning to everyone. I don't think they're useless at all for this reason. President Biden has a few more months in office. He has about 6 more months in office. And during that time, and he's already announced that he's not going to run for re-election, and he's endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris. So at this point, President Biden is, 1, looking at his legacy, and 2, trying to, in the last 6 months of office, do all the things that he's wanted to do, that he's thought about doing, because none of this discussion is new. None of these things are new. They're very progressive thoughts. We have a very divided Congress. We have a very divided country. However, the scrutiny and the distrust of the U.S. Supreme Court is not new. The discussion about what to do, how to hold the justices' feet to the fire, what to do to reestablish credibility in that court, that is not new. That's something the Biden administration has been talking about for quite some time. But they hadn't done anything about it. There were measures that were in place, these rules that were designed to put the U.S. Supreme Court justices in check. However, they had no teeth because there was no enforcement mechanism to ensure that the U.S. Supreme Court justices indeed were what they're supposed to be, neutral and not political. So this whole discussion about them, which is one of the measures that President Biden is putting forth, is not new. And I think he just wants to go for broke, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
His term is ending. He wants to do it. So for all of these measures, Santita, civil rights issues, this is where, if there's been one area where he has disappointed the Black community in terms of the promises that he made, it was in terms of policing reform and voting rights. And voting rights reform. Those are the 2 areas where people have been, in our community and in other communities, have been most critical of President Biden. So the fact that he is now emerging with concrete proposals to try to do something about that is not new. It's just that he's in the last 6 months and he's trying to get it done. So I applaud him for that. Do I think that they will fall on deaf ears? Possibly in some quarters, but there needs to be this discussion. And it's particularly important as we approach the Democratic National Committee convention, and as we have our presumptive nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris, who has endorsed these things, who's on Court with these issues. I think, Santita, it's very important. It's well timed, and I don't think it's in vain.
And so you think it's important for us to have this discussion now?
Absolutely. It's
Well,
important for us to have this discussion and hopefully implement some of these things. He still has
mhm,
the power of executive orders. He
mhm.
can do a lot of things through executive orders. And if former President Trump wins, then the former president will undo and try to unravel. But if Vice President Kamala Harris wins, and she's got a good shot at winning, then these measures which she has endorsed, and if the Democrats succeed in keeping a majority in the Senate, and if they get a majority in the House of Representatives, then these are the kinds of things which will be realistic. And we know where the vice president stands on this, our presumptive nominee.
Well, Attorney Darrell Jones, what do you make of this? I mean, would expanding the court make a difference? Would having term limits make a difference? I mean, why would this be of any consequence?
Good morning, Santita. And, I think CK really was hitting it out of the park with the analysis that she was providing. Here's what folks I think, need to take from what President Biden is doing. As has been indicating, we're talking about his legacy. We're talking about what really right now is a lame duck presidency with a divided Congress. But here's what he's doing. He's not simply talking about expanding the court. He's talking about the term limits. What impact would that have? What they're proposing is that it would be an 18-year term limit. In essence, there are probably two justices at least that would be removed for having already reached the term limit.
So,
And
so hold on one moment. This would be retroactive.
we don't know that part. We just know that it's an 18-year term limit. But if his policy were in place at the time that the current court was seated, we know that there are at least two justices that would have been removed at this point in time. And so, one of the things we have to remember is that, the whole term limit piece that he has in place, which I think is the most salient of the suggestions that he's made regarding the Supreme Court, will not go into effect during his presidency. It probably won't pass. But what it will do is that it will start the rock rolling, the discussion going as to what needs to be done to correct the actions that this Supreme Court has taken. And that's one of the discussions that we've got to get underway. The other piece that President Biden has proposed that directly impacts the Supreme Court, I think, is dealing with the ethics. And we've got to remember, when we're talking about the ethics, and the Supreme Court right now is at an all-time low with regards to how the American people receive it and trust it. And so what he's trying to do, I think, skillfully, is to lay the groundwork during this election cycle to make the Supreme Court part of this discussion, to understand that the next president is going to be appointing Supreme Courts, that the next president will be able to try to play a role in determining and defining the ethics of the court. As we've discussed here before, the Supreme Court of the United States is the only court in the United States that does not have a code of ethics that it's bound by. Every other court has a code of ethics.
Wait, stop. How can that be? How is it that we impeach presidents quicker that we don't even think of impeaching? I mean, investigating, let alone indicting, which is what an impeachment is, a Supreme Court justice. And just 2 years ago, the Gallup poll showed that only 25% of Americans have any faith in the Supreme Court at all. That's down from 36%. It just continues to sink. And please, I know they want to put The Intercept out of business because of all of their investigative reporting, and others, because when you see the business ties that these justices and their wives have to these oligarchs, and clearly they influence their decisions. Well, certainly that is, as just as a layperson, we're all human, right? Darrell, how is it that no one oversees them? I mean, really, but maybe it's the hubris of calling yourself justice. I don't know. May help me.
When the Supreme Court was set up, it was believed that the gentlemen that sat on the Supreme Court were to be above reproach. There wouldn't be a reason to look at them because they will not do anything to draw any question with regards to who they are. There would be no appearance of any impropriety because they will be of the highest standard. And so we don't need ethics for us because we're not going to do we're the best of the best. We're the most honest of the honest. We couldn't lie about cutting down the cherry tree. All that stuff, right? It is what the belief was with members of the Supreme Court. Every other federal court, every other state court beneath them all have codes of ethics, but the Supreme Court does not, I believe, for that reason. Now, they've recently tried to self-impose some type of ethics, some code of ethics, which was just extremely, there wasn't much to it. It was very soft. There were no repercussions for the breaking of your own ethical rules or anything along those lines that existed. So when President Biden starts raising the question of the Supreme Court and ethics, we've got to also remember that President Biden didn't just fall from the pineapple tree. I think is the statement that they're using now, right? He was on the Senate Judicial Committee, right? He chaired the committee, so he's looking at this, and he was a conservative, a moderate on those committees, and many would say he's still a conservative or moderate president. So when he looks at changes like this, they're not changes that become likely to him. There are things that are happening on this court that are so egregious, so offensive, so invidious, that he feels the need to say, we need to change and have a constitutional amendment dealing with the Supreme Court so that there are term limits, so that, we need to consider other ways to reel this court back in, because it's a runaway train right now with regards to the decisions that it's rendering. And he hasn't said this, but I'll say this, that the Supreme Court is an example of Project 2025 in progress. That's precisely what you see with the Supreme Court. That's the reason when you if you read Project 2025, you will see no reference to the Supreme Court whatsoever. Why? Because they already have it.
Okay, what is Project 2025? What is the application here?
Project 2025 is the conservative playbook for how to structure the government now to be close to what we would call an authoritarian rule, that the wishes of the president are the wishes of that will be carried out throughout government. So
what people have called the imperial presidency.
The imperial presidency.
And quite frankly, let's be honest, we've had mission creep on that with Democrats and Republicans, right? I mean, it's just
absolutely
creeping into that territory for quite some time. But they want to take the leap all the way over and make it a unitary presidency, right?
That is correct. And it would go into all branches of the government. They're the folks that are employed by the federal government, but and these are my words, would almost have to vow an oath of allegiance to the president, because he's going to be they serve precisely at the pleasure of the president. If you don't carry forward the president's policy, the president's plan, you can be removed from your position in the federal government. That's what Project 2025 is all about. And it's 992 pages or whatever it is. It goes into various areas of the government to discuss this. And the one area, however, it does not go into is the judiciary. And that's because, they've already controlled the judiciary. You've seen as evidence of this, let me just, not just my words, as evidence of this, when you saw the presidential immunity piece come from the Supreme Court, that's part of that Project 2025, to make him immune from any of the actions that he does during his presidency for official acts, and is questioned what it is for the unofficial acts and how you define them. But all of that is giving more power to the president, more power, more leeway to the president. Do what you want to do, kill who you want to kill, stop who you want to stop. All of that is part of that Project 2025 and the authoritarian rule, if you will, for the U.S. presidency. All of that now is coming from the Supreme Court. It's been okayed by the Supreme Court. That's part of the reason why President Biden has called for the Congress to take up presidential immunity, to say that presidents aren't immune from what they do when they're in elected office, when they're serving as president. So all of this is what's being at play now. It's really all the actions, in my estimation, that's at play. As CK, I think, brilliantly laid out, it's a political play, because it wants to put it before the American people to be certain that the American people know what's happening with this court, what's happening with this Congress, and what's actually at play.
And Reverend Wilson, I think we need to really look at this, really remove the partisan lens, because we have had an imperial presidency. You do have the oligarchs who have just seemingly, not seemingly, they have actually overtaken our government. And now we're beginning, the quiet parts being said out loud, Reverend Wilson. You know, the influence that we see, the oligarchs that they have, not just on these, well, I mean, they've compromised the justices, quite frankly. So, I mean, but what do you make of term limits, of the proposed term limits? What do you make of expanding the court? So I mean, some people have asked, Kenneth says, let's go from 9 justices to 15, and Bill Barr said, no, 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 no. If these proposals go through, you're going to eliminate conservative justices. How should we read any of this? What are your thoughts when you heard him, when you heard that he wanted to make this proposal? And interestingly enough, Attorney C.K. Hoffler and Attorney Darrell Jones, Reverend Wilson, at the LBJ Library, as they are celebrating the Civil Rights Act, which I heard Lyndon Baines Johnson's daughter say yesterday. My father's work officially ended apartheid in America. I was really glad to hear her say that. And so he was doing those two things at the same time.
Well, I think I agree with both Attorney Hoffler and Attorney Jones. I think that most people don't realize that the Supreme Court is a very political court. It has always been, by its very nature of how you become a justice. You are nominated by the president, and then you're approved by the Senate. You're only approved if the president's nominee if the president has control, his party has control of the Senate. Otherwise, like what happened with President Obama, he could not get appointments through because he did not control the votes in the Senate. And oftentimes we just nominate people. I mean, we see people appearing, but we don't think very much of our U.S. senators. Most people don't even know they have 2 per state. They don't know who they are. We don't decide who they are. We don't vote for them oftentimes and we don't realize the power of the Senate, nor do we realize the power of the United States House of Representatives. So when Biden says, I'm going to do something by executive order, it's because he can't get anything through the Congress. His hands are tied. And all of us know that to have a justice sitting on any court that has that we can't control anything they do because they don't have an ethics code, they don't have an oversight for bad behavior. I mean, we have 3 justices sitting on this court that have compromised their judicial ethics well beyond my imagination and any of our imaginations, and nothing has happened to them. Nothing. It's not just Clarence Thomas, Justice Thomas. It's not just Alito and his wife. And
and Thomas
Chief Justice,
and his wife, and
Chief
Alito
Justice.
and his wife.
I mean, it's like, what are y'all doing? And nobody can call them into question because there are no rules that govern the justices. Now, I don't know if you all remember, I think it was back in the 80s, Justice Pincham made a statement, and he was called before the Judicial Inquiry Board, and we had to go down and support him.
This is for people who are not in Chicago. And Justice Pincham, Judge Pincham was
a sitting circuit court judge. And a statement that someone felt was inappropriate. And so,
but he was, if I could say this, he was also highly regarded in the civil rights community. And he was known as a freedom fighter, like Turn Loose Bruce.
Well, not only that,
in New York,
probably one of the lawyers that has won the most appeals, filed the most, and won the most appeals on criminal cases ever in the state of Illinois, and perhaps one of the largest in the country. So he was not just a local guy; he was really a well-regarded jurist. And the fact that there was an oversight, the Judicial Inquiry Board, all judges were subject to being called before them for inappropriate actions, at least that people felt that they were. How can you have the highest court in the land the United States Supreme Court, and they have no oversight. And so, as it relates to whether or not we should have term limits, absolutely. There's no reason to give a lifetime appointment to someone who has a particular ideology that can swing the rights of people to the left or far to the right. There has to be a limit on presidential authority as it relates to the judiciary. So the presidents last for at best 8 years. They run every 4 twice. The Supreme Court is a lifetime appointment. It's ripe for fraud, for unethical behavior. And I know the framers of the Constitution felt that when you reached this court, you were supposed to be of such high legal standard and ethical and moral standard that we would look up to you and you would not falter before our eyes. Yet they're human. And they're being bought by, as you call them, oligarchs. They're being paid to do certain things, to rule a certain way. One would not normally think of that for the highest court. We don't think of it for the state Supreme Courts. They have ethical controls placed on them in every state, although they vary. It is unconscionable that the Supreme Court has no ethical standard. So I applaud President Biden. And when Vice President Harris becomes president, she can carry forth his executive orders. And if we can elect the appropriate senators and Congress members, we can get some control of both houses. It may change things.
Attorney Hoffler, it seems that, that branch of, that particular office in that branch of government has been sacrosanct. I mean, you haven't wanted to touch the Supreme Court. I mean, look at how we refer to the judges. They're no longer judges, they're justice. I mean, they have been elevated above Reverend Dr. Wilson and Attorney Jones, above everybody. And if you have the chance to be in their presence, even in a social setting, the whispers, because they are really exalted. And we shouldn't deal with people that way, because, biblically, you're not supposed to put any person before the Lord, right? Reverend Wilson, I'm just to paraphrase. I mean, you don't do that.
Well,
but we've done that. And now look at us. Now, I think it's just socially very dangerous for, you can jump in, Reverend Wilson, but I certainly want you to weigh in, Attorney Hoffler, and you, Daryl Jones. It's like we're shredding the social contract. When you have this much mistrust and distrust of our councils of government, then I mean, when you want to know where January 6th comes from, when you want to know where Trump comes from, and all this anger, and really, please, even Bernie Sanders, even though Bernie Sanders is my guy, these people, Americans, are angry, and they don't trust anything. And it's like we can't even you, with all of the controversy around Justices Alito and Thomas and others, they're not recusing themselves from cases. The only one who's done that in the affirmative action case was Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. And she took heat, but she was correct. She said, "Look, I sat on the governing board of Harvard. I can't. I'm going to sit on the UNC case, but the Harvard case, no, that would be inappropriate." She's the only one. She's the only one who's done that.
And she said that when she was confirmed that she felt that she would have to do that. But Santita, you raise an excellent point. It's not just that the U.S. Supreme Court justices are really, really perceived as being, untouchable. They are untouchable. It's that they're not just the court of the government. They are the highest court of this land. So the distrust, the severe distrust, I believe, in this country happened when they reversed Roe versus Wade. Because when there's this concept called stare decisis that we learn in law school, that when the Supreme Court has ruled and when there's a law, they're not supposed to reverse themselves. There might be some modifications or something, but there was a complete reversal of what the law of the land had been for decades.
Hold that point. because let me ask you this, because I'm a layperson. What did that mean in the legal community
Well,
when you saw that? Because I just know as a layperson, I heard these three justices who Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett. They said, "Hey, this is established law. I'm not going to touch it."
they said whatever they need to do to get confirmed.
And no,
So,
but they've not been impeached.
right.
I mean,
Well,
they lied.
You
who's
don't impeach them.
who's going to impeach them? So if they go through a process who's going to impeach them? There's no real enforcement mechanism to discipline the U.S. Supreme Court. It's not designed that way. That's why there is, I believe, a need for some reform. And that's why what President Biden is proposing and other measures are important. It's important to have that discussion because what was envisioned by the founding fathers, first of all, when they envisioned that, Black people had no power. We didn't exist. We were animals. So we have to, we've got to modify a lot of times what the founding fathers of this country envisioned. And this is one of them because they never envisioned that women would sit on the U.S. Supreme Court. They never envisioned that African Americans would sit on the U.S. Supreme Court. They envisioned that only white men would be on the U.S. Supreme Court as justices to rule and to state what the law was. But when you ask the question, what was the impact? Or what did it mean when there was the reversal of Roe versus Wade in the legal community? It sent shockwaves even amongst conservatives because they never thought they would see that day on that issue because it was something we thought that was sacrosanct, just like we think the Supreme Court is, the U.S. Supreme Court is sacrosanct. So that was the beginning, I believe, of the unraveling of the trust in this country of the U.S. Supreme Court, not just by progressives or liberals, but also by others. So, and now, since that time, there have been so many things that have been eroded, so many issues, giving really immunity for criminal acts. Just think about it, criminal acts for a sitting president. Now, the one thing that we know, the case in New York and the actions there, while we are not quite sure what the impact of the U.S. Supreme Court's decision is on that, those acts happened before he became president of the United States. So that case may be treated differently, but all the other cases that are in the pipeline for sure will be impacted by that decision. That was a political decision. So does that mean that a sitting president can go out of the White House and for no reason, no justified reason, no threat, take a gun and shoot whomever and not be prosecuted? Because that illegality has happened while he or she is president of the United States? That cannot be. That cannot be what anyone expected, anyone intended in terms of immunity for the president of the United States. So I think that the U.S. Supreme Court has lost its credibility. It's time for there to be change. Every branch of government has to be held accountable. There are three separate branches of government. You can't be judge, jury, and executioner at the same time, and that is what the U.S. Supreme Court is. They are the judge, they are the jury, and they are the executioner, so there's no accountability. And literally, and they have executed on this, they can do whatever they want. They can, federal judges cannot. So there is federal judges, that's the next level down. Federal judges, they are subject to discipline. They cannot just act with impunity. So why should U.S. Supreme Court judges be afforded that? It's not because they are the top court of the land. It can't be that. So there's always got to be accountability for everyone. If there's accountability for the president, if there's accountability for members of Congress, why would there be accountability for the entire third branch of government, the judiciary?
So I think that what has happened, and I agree with what CK is saying, but until I went to law school, like most Americans, we thought when you saw a Supreme Court justice, it was like the next level below God. Whatever they said, they were holy. But once I discovered the cases and read some of the opinions, the Supreme Court has been evolving over the years based on who the president was and who members of the Senate were and the level of pressure. If you remember, CK, they interpreted Brown versus the Board of Education in a very skewed way. The whole idea of slavery in a very That's why
Well,
Lincoln.
no, hold that thought, because I think you're onto something. Do they respond to the zeitgeist, to the politics of the times? I mean, because
Yes,
the Brown v. Board of Education decision, Black folks didn't want to go to the Second World War. The white America knew they had a problem with Black folks because, and then, uh, I mean, and because there was a lot of movement, a lot of pushing. I mean, the modern day civil rights movement was really beginning to take flight. And then, you know, the Civil War gave us these other amendments. I mean, America continues to evolve. Do you think that
and
our marching and our activity?
the only way America changes is the pressure of the people. The
Okay.
only way we see
And so
progress.
we influence the court as well, you're saying?
We because the court is a political body. They are nominated by sitting president. All the federal court justices are nominated by the president, approved by the Senate. It's very political. And once you understand it's political, then you have to put pressure on those particular spots if you want to change things. President Trump was very clear on the power of the court, which is why he made, what is it, 1/3 of the Supreme Court and several, almost 2/3 of the federal district courts across the country. So wherever he was charged and tried, he had a judge, a federal judge that would rule in his favor. It's very political. It has nothing to do with what the law says. It has everything to do with how those judges, based on their political ideologies, would determine how to apply the law to that particular case. And so Trump is very clear where he can go and what judges he's made appointments of. That's why the judge down in Florida is just so confused. She's trying to do what he says, but she's so inadequate in terms of legal understanding. She's trying to figure it out. She's, I'm with you, but she doesn't know enough law to really cover up her decision. She can't write a great decision. And so that's what we're seeing. And the CK saying the court is really evolving now. And if we don't put more pressure on them, it will change in a very conservative way against the will of the needs of the people.
And yet,
go ahead.
No, and yet Bill Barr is afraid that these three measures, if implemented, you're going to purge the court of all of the conservatives.
Yes.
Why? How did he arrive at that conclusion, Daryl?
Well, I think that he's arriving at that conclusion. One, he's talking about the expansion of the court, so that it just sort of dilutes the conservative. And of course, he's assuming that there's a Democrat that's in the White House that's doing the appointment, and that there's a Democratic Senate that's in place that approves the appointments, so that it would just dilute the power of the conservative justices that are currently sitting in place. But as we're making this discussion, though, Santita, and we're talking about the power of the court and the power of people to get out and vote, and this is part of the importance. There's a greater issue that I think we have to take into consideration as well, and that is this. When we look at the Supreme Court as it is comprised today, one of the things that we have to remember is that we have the majority of this court that have been appointed by presidents that lost the popular vote. So it's not that the court represents the popular thought of the people of the United States. The majority of the court right now represents a minority of the populists that are in the country in that methodology of thinking and that philosophy of thinking. And that's what you're seeing coming through. That's what you're seeing happening, I believe, when you see all this response to the Dobbs decision, when you see all the response to the Students for Fair Admissions decision. You're going to see other pieces that are percolating up through the system as well when we start talking about, how they're trying to stop Black women from being able to have 501c3s and C4s to promote other Black women businesses, to give them money. That fearless fund decision that's percolating through the system right now. All of this comes because you have this majority court that's in place, that's that's imposing their policy. The other piece that I also want to just lay out very quickly is that, with this court is not, what they did with the presidential immunity case and saying that the president is immune from all these things that he's doing while he's in office. He's immune from this. You can't touch him on this. You can't touch him on that. That's laying the groundwork for themselves, right? That saying, look, we're doing all this stuff. We're taking all this Harlem Pro money. We're taking all these vacations.
I mean, let's keep it 100. This is a bipartisan betrayal. I have to say that, because this is how the business is done. This is not sexy, everybody. I know you don't like it, but this is how the sausage is made. This is how a majoritarian government. There's no direct election from the people to the presidency. There's something called the electoral college, and depending upon where the governor is and where the legislature is, and Democrats, for example, are underrepresented in the U.S. House of Representatives. But this is messy, but we can clean it up. I think that's what's good about this discussion, Daryl. And this is something Americans, we don't even conceive of expanding the court, touching the Supreme
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it's happened before.
Yeah,
the court has been expanded previously. So it's not a new concept. It's happened before. And one of the things that I think, if you really want to empower the people in America, if you really want to empower the people, you get rid of that electoral college.
Absolutely.
If whoever has the most votes is the person that wins. You don't embolden and strengthen the South because they're in the South and this is some whatever because they lost the Civil War. If you want to strengthen the people in America and have one vote mean one vote, then you get rid of that electoral college. I mean, that I just think is the precipice to it all. When we talk about the Supreme Court, when we talk about the presidency, Santita, you'll like this. When I was at the National Bar Conference, the Association Conference this past time.
We all had a wonderful time, but I was there for 5 minutes.
I was talking about the presidential immunity case, and I say the same concept applies to the Supreme Court. Goes back to that Aurelian theory that all animals on the farm are equal, only some are more equal than others. That's precisely what you're seeing with this presidency now. When you get the immunity, you're saying, oh, then no one's above the law. But if you're the president, you have more rights than the ordinary citizen. Oh, if you're part of the Supreme Court, you're bound by the same terms as any other judge. Oh, but if you're part of the Supreme Court, you have a few more rights than the other animals that are on the farm. That's what's been going up there.
But they have, Daryl. I mean, and the fact is, now I think maybe we can just, CK, have the discussion. And I don't want to pivot away from you because I want people to listen to your show at 12 noon today. That's right. every Tuesday on WOL in DC and on BarbaraArnwine.com, ARNWINE.com. That's right. And you'll be hearing more about this and your voting rights. I'm gonna bring you back this week because we got to talk about our voting rights because no one's talking about that, CK. And of course, CK a little bit later on, just at 11 o'clock Eastern, and this is all Eastern Standard Time, everybody.
Yeah.
Eastern Standard Time, 12 o'clock. Barbara Arnwine and attorney Daryl Jones on WOL in DC, but she is on WAOK in Atlanta. But you can hear it everywhere. And of course, she'll be on Court TV. But today, she'll be on Tuesdays. She will be on at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And today, she will also be on Court TV. At what time?
2 to 3 Eastern Standard Time.
Thank you. We say it every time we can, and I'm not upset about it. I'm upset when you just don't tell people. That's right. It's like the quiet part is being said out loud. And the other side of that is that people really do have the power. I don't know if we really fully embrace that. Maybe if we're afraid of it, I don't know. In the work that you do, Reverend Wilson, and the work that you do, Daryl Jones, and the work that you do, Attorney Hoffler, that we have much more power than we even know.
We do. We absolutely do, Santita. And proof positive of that is that there's a possibility that this country is going to elect an African-American woman as president of the United States. And that is only going to happen if not only does she have her base with her, but independents also vote, and possibly some Republicans. We do have the power. There never would have been a Barack Obama if we didn't have the power.
Wait. Weren't there 90,000 white men who had their call? They were trying to break. I think they raised $3 million last night.
Absolutely. They were trying to break the record of the black women, the black men. So I love
I'm
that
not
there's this
mad at him.
competitive
Thank
spirit.
you.
But she's reaching across the aisle. And what we're seeing, quite frankly, Santita, I think all of us, well, let me not speak for all of us. I was there supporting President Biden. I really was. I was just so concerned. I had anxiety watching him because of what I perceived as, and we talked about this, as a medical issue.
Yes.
He is our president. We didn't want to see
No,
that.
but wait a minute. But CK, don't stop. We were all pulling for him. When I engaged in loving critique of him, I was reminding people that he is functioning in a context. He has always been on the right wing he's part of the right wing of the party. We're going to have to push him. We thought Barack was a progressive. Barack has never been a progressive. No, he has always been a moderate. He was one of the DLC leaders to watch in 2003. He came under a lot of criticism from the progressive community, particularly the progressive Black community, because that's the right wing of the party. He's been their guy. That does not mean I don't support you. I just understand where you are posited politically. So I know how I have to posit myself so I can get what I need. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, so maybe CK, it's a painful moment. It was a lot of cold water in our faces, but CK, I think we're learning some big lessons here, CK.
We are learning some huge lessons. And once you learn the lessons, you don't go back. That's the thing. You don't want to go back. And I think what many of us are fighting is keeping the progress, keeping going. We want to go forward and not go back. We don't want to go women have to go back in the closets. We don't want to have women's reproductive rights. What's happened with the Roe versus Wade, no matter how you feel on the abortion question, is that we have gone back, taken steps back.
Wait. Mifepristone has nothing to do with abortions. If you got to do that so you can resolve a miscarriage.
Absolutely.
I lost a very dear friend.
Things that have nothing to do with abortions, medical decisions that doctors need to make. It has nothing. And
I lost a very dear friend who had not resolved her miscarriage properly. She died. Her husband went to wake her up. She was gone. Because everything had not been flushed out of her system. That's what mifepristone does. And now that's before the court.
Right. But let's talk about we're not going to get political, but the vice presidential, not J.D. Vance, his position is, because it's left to the states to make decisions on how they're going to implement the reverse.
Why are you trying to vex my spirit so early?
I just have to vex right at this moment because I got to leave soon. J.D. Vance said, no, it doesn't matter. Incest, medical problems, you're about to die, you're on your deathbed, everybody gonna die. No.
Catwoman.
Abortion.
I never heard.
All that.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
That.
If anything, hold on. I don't believe in Schadenfreude. The German phrase that says you glory in someone else's pain or misfortune. But I know Donald Trump has got to be having some buyer's remorse. When I've seen him on TV, he is looking like this. He said, and you all did a bait and switch on us because we were not supposed to be running against Kamala.
Right. You know what's so interesting? What I think is interesting that I have to say, Santita, is how things have changed. 3 weeks ago, the Democratic Party was in shambles. Everybody was just so upset. What in the world is going to happen in shambles as we watch the debate, as we watch President Biden say, I'm staying in. The party was in shambles, people threatening this and that and that and this. And Donald Trump was sitting pretty at his convention. There had just been an assassination attempt. What he should have done is had that fist pump. He should have been the victim of an assassination.
No, he should have had a cross behind him on that stage and said them bulbs with Trump on it, and he should have just risen up on it.
Just risen up on all that. But he just couldn't help himself. He had to come back. And then he appointed somebody as his running mate. He brought his running mate who they clearly didn't really vet appropriately. Have you all seen some of the text messages he sent while in Oh my goodness.
CK, he listened to his sons. His sons pushed JD Vance. They thought, there's nothing like a new convert, right? And they thought they had a convert on their hands and they had an opportunist. But also at the end of the day, Peter Thiel and the oligarchs wanted him, Elon Musk. Come on, y'all. And this is a man who has a venture capital firm that sponsors sharecropping. They own farmland. And guess what? You can work the farmland. You just owe the owner. Who and the corporate media have not even said that. It's unbelievable. But you know what? I only got literally a minute and a half here because I'm going to have to rush out here. Everybody, second hour, we're talking about Sonia Massey. I want you all to go to the second hour because we have got to talk about Sonia Massey. I know you all have your other obligations this morning, but and Reverend Wilson will be joining us. Reverend Wilson, we've got the Rainbow Push Convention. Of course, the chair of our board is here.
And she's going to be at the convention.
And so will Daryl Jones with Bailey.
Daryl Jones is coming. CK is coming.
And Bailey
because there has
his
to be an analysis of these things. I'm sorry.
I got you, boo. I got you. I wasn't making an announcement.
And can I just say something about Sonia Massey? That is the most. We thought that George Floyd was just something we could never. We knew it was happening. Sonia Massey is even more horrific on so many other levels.
Why? I got 30 seconds for you.
Why? Because here you really have a defenseless woman. You see how there was de-escalation. There was no reason, no threat that she really posed, and he shot her in the face. And right there.
Wait a minute, girl. As she rebuked him in the name of Jesus.
And Jesus, and then said, "Oh, I'm sorry."
And he said, "I'm gonna shoot you in your face."
That's right.
He said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus."
Too.
Oh, wow. Wait a minute. Someone who'd worked at 6 police departments in 4 years who'd been kicked out the army. I mean, what? Sean Grayson, everybody. That's his name. See, I don't buy into what the corporate media are doing. I believe you call their names and you need to find out. I want to know who his mom and daddy are, who his siblings are. I want to know what his community's like. I want to know what produced him. If you're gonna do a special on Malcolm X, the hate that hate produced, why don't you tell me what produced Sean Grayson? Because our own armed forces, our army didn't want him in there. Are you nuts? 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on WAOK. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, and today you will be on Court TV, beautiful one. At what time?
From 2 to 3 Eastern Standard Time.
And handsome bow tie, Mr. GQ. You and G.A. Hardaway. Boom. You will be on WOL today. I mean, come on. WOL at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. And I'm really glad that you all are going to be there. I've got to make a hard pivot. Reverend Wilson, we've got 30 seconds, a Rainbow Push International Conference.
August the 15th through the 18th. And attorneys Daryl Jones, C.K. Hoffler will be present during the convention. We start on the 15th with education and looking at Stop the Violence, Save the Children. It's impossible to be educated in a hostile military-like environment. And many of our children go to school every day in America. The next day it's women. We're going to look at women's issues. We have a woman for the first time, presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party for the office of president. We're going to be looking at what issues do women want? What is our platform? It's the People's Convention. It's the People's Platform, People's Agenda. And we look forward to Saturday when our legal minds will share with us what really is at stake in this election and why people need to turn out and how we're going to make sure that their votes are protected. And then Sunday, International, and we're honoring Reverend Jackson. The Nation magazine is honoring Reverend Jackson. Everything is at push. Want to come home for our convention this year. We look forward to seeing all of you.
Absolutely, at 930 50th Street. And what we want is, as people are gathering in Chicago to demonstrate and to express their opinions about the issues of the domestic, the local, the international issues, we want you to make Push your home. Dr. King's workshop, Rainbow Push, 930 50th Street. Go to rainbowpush.org. Want you to be a part of the convention. Don't cost you nothing. Just come on through, everybody. Love you much. Next hour, Sonia Massey. How did this happen? Let's get to it. Let's move on over to the next hour of the Santita Jackson Show. Mwah. Bye-bye.